Welcome to Felt Tube number 9 and Summer Fergus. Today we are working on the palm tree. It's Sandi MacIver here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are working on the palm tree, and I'm showing you that you can get the whole trunk cut out of 1/2 of a sheet of Spellbinders felt in one of the browns. So you need 3 pieces for the trunk and then 1 for the base. For the fronds, I used 2 die cuts for each one, and one of my trees I did 5, one I did 6. So your choice. This circle thing is for the coconuts, and I used 2 on either side of my palm tree, so 4 in total. Okay, I'm just going to pack them all up here in my little crafty stack, and we are going to get stitching. Here's what we're making. Isn't this cool? 3-dimensional, made out of felt, and it stands up, and it's the perfect height behind your Summer Fergus. Starting off, we are going to pin 2 of these together, and I am using my binder clips from my quilting desk. They work really good for holding this felt together. You'll also see that I have some tweezers there. I like to use these to push out all the little pieces. That way I can see through all of the die cuts and know that I have everything lined up. I'm giving you 3 fingers because that's how many threads of the DMC cotton I'm using, and we are off and running. I leave a tail on the inside. Okay, and basically you're going to do a running stitch, and of course I've got this sped up. I don't stitch quite this quickly. Okay, and we're going to go all the way up, and then I'm going to explain what goes on at the top. So just work your way in and out. Don't pull too hard. You don't want to tear any of your felt. I try really hard to go straight up and down, but that doesn't always work. And I find holding on to it really firmly with my left hand helps as well. There's quite a few different browns in the selection of felt from Spellbinders, so find one that you like, and remember that you want a little bit darker one for your little coconuts. Okay, we're almost at the top. Just a few more stitches to go, and basically what I want to tell you, and I'll tell you now, there are 3 or 4 stitches across this top, and you're not going to do them until we do the final side of the tree trunk. Okay, so you want to leave those ones all along the top. When you get to this part here, you're just going to turn around and you're going to go right back down. And again, from previous videos, I like to pull my stitches up and down on the inside of the pieces that are already there. And I find that it lines up quite nicely and it gives me a nice finished look. I wouldn't do the blanket stitch on this one. You need the strength of the running stitch because we have to stuff it, and it's a long way to go without tearing any of the holes and having it bust open on you. So just a heads up there, the running stitch is a better idea for this one. Okay, and when we get to the bottom, I'm going to do the same thing that I started. I'm only going to go through 1/2 at the bottom. There's an open hole there, and I'm just going to open this up, go through that last stitch, pull everything inside. I'm going to clip, and then I'm going to tie a knot. And for this one, I'm leaving the strings inside of the trunk. Okay, I'm not going to snip them. If you do snip them, you want to put glue on it because the corners take all the pressure when we're doing the stuffing. And that's why I left my strings nice and long so that I had lots of strength in that corner. Okay, so now you're going to take the next one. It doesn't look like it's going to fit because it's shaped the wrong way, but it does fit. You just have to go along and angle it. Okay, and add your clips. And it works out fine. Okay, line it up at that top part there, which is hard to do sometimes, and add that final clip. And then I'm going to start at the bottom again, going inside the middle, coming up through the top and leaving a tail, which I'm just going to tuck aside. Okay, and then in and out all the way up and all the way back down, again leaving the top and not stitching it. Okay, so here's the top. I'm showing you again. We're going to here and we're leaving those last 3. We're not going to stitch them right now. And back down. Here's my third one. I've got it all pinned. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to stitch up to the top, and then I'm going to show you how to close it. Okay, so setting my tail up and just getting ready to stitch, and I'll just fast forward and we'll get to the top. When you get to the top, you've got 3 little things going on, and you've got 3 stitches on all 3 sides. And so what I do is I take 1 stitch in for the one across, okay, and that closes that little portion, and then turn, and you're going to do the same thing into this one to the one across from it, okay. And for this one, you're going to come back through and grab that bottom stitch, and then 1 up, and that takes care of both of those on that side, and it puts you in position to do the center stitch for the next side. So holding those together and going through the back side, again doing that down the side stitch and then coming back up, and that take care of that for both sides for you, and then you've got the 1 stitch at the top going through. And that puts you back on the side that you need to be at to go back down and finish your stitch. Oh, one more there, sorry. You have to go backwards on that last one to the left, okay? And that puts you in position to go back down and finish your running stitch on that final side. And it gives you a nice finished top. Okay, so we're going to stuff this next, and this is the stuffing that I like to use. I get it from Michael's, and it's nice and soft. It works perfectly, and you want to stuff with little tiny pieces, okay? Don't overstuff when you're trying to get to the top. And I like to use the eraser end of a pencil. I find it grabs onto that fiber and helps push it in. And just work it gently all the way up, okay? You don't want to split any of your seams open. And I'm going to go about to there, and then we're going to get the crushed walnut shells out. Okay, I'm going to get that last little piece of batting in there. And you want to jam it up there so that it's fairly stiff, because you need that strength for it to stand up by itself. Lizard Litter. Get it from Amazon. It's crushed walnut shells. But before we stuff, we are going to stitch up 2 sides of the base, and that way we only have 1 side to stitch up once we get it stuffed with the lizard litter. I always want to say glitter, but it's litter. Okay, so use your pins again and pin 2 sides. And the way this lines up, pretty straightforward all the way across, but in the corners, you're going to go in and out of the center point hole in the little base piece. And the reason I designed it that way is it adds extra strength on either side of the stitching lines coming down from the trunk. Okay, and we want as much strength as we can get on these little corner pieces. So again, leaving a tail, and we're going to go in and out running stitch all the way across. And I'll show you when we get to this corner here what I mean by the extra stitching. So there's a hole in the base of the trunk, and you're going to go up and then angle into the center hole in the base. So just a couple more stitches and we'll get there. Hopefully you can see this. I've got my lights on as bright as I can, but I know I'm stitching brown on brown, so it's difficult sometimes. Okay, so back in to the one in the corner, and then we're going to come up. Sorry, I got to see it, and then I got to push it back so you can see it. And see, you're going to come up into that hole at the tip in the base. Okay. And then you're going to go back down into the next hole on the other side, and then come back up through the one at the very end, and then up through the one in the tip in the base. And that gives you a stitch on either side and makes it nice and strong so that it's not going to tear when we start stuffing it the rest of the way with the crushed walnuts. And sorry I keep pulling it out of the frame, but this is really hard to see when you're holding it way out in front of you. So I keep having to pull it back in so I can see where I'm going. So this is the second side, and again, you're going to do the running stitch. And I like to stitch both of the points before I start filling it in. the more you can stitch, the safer you're going to be for not tearing holes, which is what this is all about on this base. Okay, so sneaking up on the next tip, going down through the last two, into the corner, going up through the one in the base, and then through the one at the point, and coming back down on the other side from the hole in the point back to the first hole along the bottom of that side of the trunk, and then back up through the point again. And then I take one stitch farther, well, back into the point. Here we go. So there's 2 stitches on both of those points. We've got this side still to open, and I'm going to use a funnel and a little spoon and a bowl to try and keep a hold of anything that kind of escapes, that doesn't like to sit in there very well. I don't know why I keep trying. Okay, get the bag open. And we're going to start shoveling in these. You just want to shake it and get it around. I also use the bottom of it to push it down and get as much as that walnuts in there as I possibly can. Okay. You want to get it in there nice and firm, but again, not too much that, number one, it's going to overflow and make it really hard for you to stitch it closed. And number two, you don't want to stuff it so much that you break one of the sides open. So there's a happy medium there. Just when you're holding it with your left hand or your non-dominant hand, that it feels firm. Now I'm using the point of the pencil this time to push down and to get some of that into the fiber, okay? And just leveling it out and popping the top up, and I can get another half a little spoonful in there. You want it even, you don't want it overflowing. Okay. And now we need to stitch up this side. So you got to go carefully. You kind of got to go back and forth looking at both sides, making sure that you're lining up the holes, working your way across. I'm going to push some of those more to the back so that they're not right where I'm stitching. Okay. And this is about the slowest process of the whole part of the tree. And it's worth it because this is the weight that you need for the tree to stand up by itself. And really, it's only about, I don't know, 20, 30 stitches. So it doesn't take a long time. It's just finicky. And then once you get the side stitched up, it's all stitched up one way. It's really easy to go back and do the fill-in stitches back the other way. And you've already done all your corners as well. So you just zip right by. Okay, so here's the final corner that we have to stitch up. And we've already got one side stitched when we started. But you want to get that double stitch in on either side of this point as well. I'm trying not to get a knot. That's why I'm holding on to both sides of my thread. Plus, this is where the tail is, so you got to make sure the tail's out of the way as well. And we need the tail to tie it off. Okay, so back through the point, making sure I've got that full. So I've gone all the way around. Now I'm going to reverse back, and I'm going to stitch back to the left. I'm going to move my bowl and my mess out of the way. And we're just going to work our way back. And like I said, this gets sped up a lot because... Okay, so I'm back at the start and I'm doing that final stitch, and then we're right into the corner. What you want to do again is just snip off your thread, and we are going to tie 3 little knots into this corner, and then I'm going to take my glue, and once I trim it, I'm going to take my glue and I'm going to add a little bit of glue over the tails and just let that sit and dry, and that will stop any of those knots coming untied. Okay, so just get right in there, and then you can close that tip and it hides those little threads. And I'm doing that to all 3 sides. And this finishes all those 3 pieces coming together and gives them a nice finished look at the bottom. And again, it only takes a sec. And then there's our tree trunk all ready to go. And it's freestanding. Next onto the fronds, and we have 2 pieces, and I've poked all of the little holes out already, so you just want to line them up, get them nice and even. Use a couple more of the quilting binding clips. Place them in there, and we're going to go down to here, out here, over here, down to the next one, back and forth, down, sideways to the end, and then you come all the way back, because when you go in and out of the side pieces, you fill in all of the stitching. So again, we're going to start at the bottom in the middle, and I'm going to tuck that tail up inside so it's kind of out of the way. You do want to make sure that you don't snag it with your stitches, so don't put it too far in there. Okay, and I'm just letting that little end hang out. I like to put a knot in the ends of those, that way it's easier to grab onto. Okay, so then off we go. We're just going to go up and down, and I've sped this up a little bit, but I'm going to show you how I go back and forth to do the side pieces. So here I am here. So I'm going to go to the left, in, up, down, and then go back to the center. And do the same thing to the other side. And then back to the center. And carry on down the center until you get to the next one. And see how the stitches are all finished on the side pieces, but they're not on the center? Okay, so you keep on going till we get to the next little avenue out to the side. And do that stitch. Okay, then come back in. We got to go up one more stitch to do the other little avenue out the side, or a side street, whatever you want to call it. Okay, and there's 3 stitches going that way. Then come back through, and then back to the center, and see all the stitches are nice on the back. And you're going to carry forward to the next portion. It's nice to have a brighter color. It's easier to see. That brown was kind of hard. I had to really turn the lights up. Okay, so getting rid of that last clip because we're getting into the home stretch here. And doing that last little side street. And then you're going to stitch up and down to the end with the running stitch. Okay, and then that final tip, and then you just see all the stitches are good on the back except for the center. So you're just going to turn around and come all the way back down. Once you get back down to the end, again, you're going to open it and just go in that one side so that your thread is in between the 2 pieces of felt. Clip off your thread and tie a knot, and then add a little bit of glue. You don't necessarily need the glue for this step, and you could also tuck those threads in if you wanted to, because by the time we get everything stitched on the top of the trunk of the tree, it's going to be pretty well secured. Anyway, you want to do that. I did 6 of these. Okay. Next up, we're going to do the little coconuts. Using 3 strands of DMC 898, we're going to make these little coconuts. Okay, and we are going to use a gathering stitch, so just in and out, in and out, in and out, all the way around. And again, I tied a knot in the end because we need to pull it really, really tight. So make sure it's a big knot so it doesn't go through your felt. So just in and out all the way around, about 1/4 inch away from the edge because you don't want it tearing while you're pulling it tight to gather it. And you're going to need a small amount of that batting that we used at the top of the tree trunk as well. Okay, so gone all the way around. I'm pulling it so it makes a little cup. And then we're taking a little bit of the batting and we're going to stuff it. So this is exactly the same way that we do Fergus's nose. It's just this circle is a little bit bigger to get the right dimensions for the coconuts in the top of our palm tree. And so again, we're going to pull stitches back and forth across to close this. And I probably do 6 or 7 of those. You want to make sure that it's nice and tight and closed and that you don't have any of the batting hanging out, because those fuzzy little white things show up. And then you're going to tie it in a really good knot. I do 2 or 3 knots at the end because I glue these on. You can stitch them if you want to. They're a heck of a lot easier to glue. By the time we get all the stitching done, it's really, really hard to get through all of the layers of felt with a short needle. Okay, so do the knots, and I'm just finishing off, and then we're going to snip it. And I'm going to glue that knot, just in case. And we're ready to put this thing together. I'm just showing you one that's already completed here. We are going to sew all of these guys onto the top of our trunk. And we do them one at a time. I like to start from the bottom and work my way up. If you want to start from the top, that's cool too. And then we use the position of the coconuts to kind of hide any holes that we may inadvertently create while we're doing all this. So you want to take your fronds and you want 3 going one way, 3 going the other way. I'm just kind of lining mine up the way I'm going to use them. I have a nice long piece of the green DMC thread, and again 3 strands with a knot in it. Okay, and we're going to line up the first one. And I'm going to go through the trunk first, and then I'm going to come up through the end of the leaf. And what I do this 2 or 3 times, and I make an X with my stitches on the leaves by the 3rd time, and that just kind of makes them stable. If you go in and out and you have all of your stitches going the same direction, it makes the fronds kind of floppy. So just keep that in mind when you're doing the stitches, to try and do an X or a cross. And again, sorry I keep pulling it out of the screen, but I need to see where I'm going, so I need to put it up close. I have my arms almost completely extended to get this into the middle of the video, just the way my camera equipment is set up. Okay, so I'm showing you that we're going through all the way to the back, because now we're going to stitch one on the other side. And I find going back and forth like this and stitching one on either side, I can continue to test it to make sure that it's going to stand up and that the top stays balanced so that it stays standing up. So I've already got my thread started from the other side. This time I just need to go through the leaf and then back in and grab some of the trunk. Okay, and do the same thing. You're going to come back through and stitch through the leaf again, creating the X. And then I do one final one. I guess I end up with a star. You want to make sure you at least get the X in there. It's important. Okay, so now again, I'm doing this final stitch through and making sure that it's still standing all right. And I'm going to poke the needle through because we're going to add another one on the other side. So find a place to jam it through. Doesn't hurt to go through that leaf one more time. Just adds more stability. Okay. Lay them out, decide where you want the next one to go. Down or up. I'm trying a couple more, going a little bit farther down than I did my first one. My first one only has 5 leaves or fronds on it, and I kept them kind of pretty much at the top. For this one, I'm experimenting having a few more of them facing downwards so that when you have your Fergus sitting in front of them, you have a nice bit of greenery behind him instead of just the trunk of the tree. And I kind of like the way this one turned out, and I like that it's a little bit fuller because I used 6 leaves instead of 5. Also, the green that I used is a little bit more vibrant. Okay, and I've got this on a pretty slow process, walking you through this just because some people like to watch it without it being completely sped up. So if you're not one of those people, just speed forward. Okay, and as you can see, it's kind of floppy until you get that 3rd stitch in there. Okay, and I got it wound around one of the ones on the back, so make sure that doesn't happen to you. and coming back up. Okay, that one's on there pretty secure. Here comes the fourth one. Again, putting it through the leaf first and then positioning it. And again, this one's facing down. So you just have to be patient. You need a long piece of thread. It gets wrapped around the fronds quite regularly. So just take your time and get your stitches in there. And you'll see at this point, this is where I said that it doesn't really matter what the top of your palm tree trunk looks like, because by the time we're finished this, you're not going to be able to see it. And I'm running numerous stitches through the top of it. So it's also not going to come undone. Okay, so I've got those four the way I like it. And I'm just kind of auditioning the final two to see where I want to put them. I definitely want them facing upwards. I want to make sure my tree is still standing all by itself, that it's not off balance and falling over. And I think the final two kind of facing up this way turned out to be a good way to go. Just like that. Okay, so we're going to start by stitching this fifth one into place. Going through and then back. Tucking it over top of the other leaves and then going through the trunk. And you kind of have to, at this point, you kind of have to do that from the top. Okay, and then come back through the bottom to add your cross on your stitch, making sure that it's positioned. You can maneuver it around for the first stitch, but after you get that second stitch in there, it's kind of set in stone as to which way it's going to hang. So make sure you have it in a good position when you get that second stitch in there. And I'm just making sure that it's still standing okay. You got kind of a one last go at, kind of angling it the right way. And then going back through the tree trunk and putting that third stitch in. You can put more stitches if you want. I would say 3 is probably the minimum. Okay, so I went back through right to the other side because I need the thread over there to add this last one on the back side. And again, going through the leaf both ways. Okay, and then pushing through the trunk. By now it's getting a little busy in there. But that's what coconuts are for. It's like when you're doing card making, you always embellish last, just in case you have a little boo-boo that you need to cover up. It's the same thing with doing these little guys. And there's 2 coconuts for either side, so you have an opportunity to hide some little sins underneath them. Okay, so we got it where we're going. I got my thread all tangled up again. Just making sure that it's where I want it and that it's still standing all right, and it is. So I'm going to put my final stitches in. Just kind of maneuvering this one around, making sure that where I'm going to put the coconuts is going to cover what I want it to. And I'm good. Okay, last couple of stitches. And then again, you're just going to tie off a knot and add a little bit of glue to it. Okay, the final step is those cute little coconuts, and I've got them just laying there. I've got one side glued, and I used the Barely Art glue for that, but my Barely Art glue got frozen and it keeps separating. So while we were working on this, I switched over to the Simon Says Stamps craft glue. It's thicker, and I find that it works really, really well on felt. So I'm going to glue these little guys down, and add an abundance of glue to either side, and then you basically just have to sit and do nothing for 5 minutes and hold on to all 4 of these little guys to get them to stay nice and glued. And see, that's where the one on the other side pops out. Okay, so just kind of hold on like this and, I don't know, listen to music for a few minutes. So there we go. Here's my finished palm tree. Isn't it cute? And it stands up by itself. Here's the first one I did as my sample. And it's the one with the 5 fronds instead of the 6. And it has a lighter felt as well. There you go.